I think. Hello and welcome to a Wednesday edition of the Osceola Seminole Sidelines. My name is Pat Burnham, and we are excited to be joined by the voice of FSU baseball, Eric Luallen, today, along with Kurt Weiler. Eric, thanks for joining us, man.
No problem. Happy to.
I saw you last Friday, and it seemed like a good time to reach out and see if you wanted to. No, was it last Friday or Saturday? I saw you one day. Right?
It was Saturday. No, it was Friday.
Okay. Yeah, so we saw each other Friday night having a glass of beer.
First spring Friday off in I don't know how long.
Yeah.
It's a rarity.
Yes.
It is a rarity for you. And listen, we wish you had been working on Friday. There's no doubt about that. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Before we get started, I just want to explain to folks there is always risk involved when you're doing live YouTube or live podcast from your house. I live in the Clarn area, and there's a ton of construction going on the golf course. They're actually right outside my house today with chainsaws and backhoes. So if I disappear, that is why, and we'll let Kurt, Eric kind of struggle on and continue and move on. But listen, there are a lot of reasons we wanted to have Eric on today, and we want to get his perspective on the baseball season as a whole. But, also, Eric, you have been a member of Florida State community since you signed with Florida State in 1986. Am I right about that? Was it
Correct.
6?
Yes.
And, extremely close.
That was just a wee lad back then.
Yeah, you were. We're going to talk about how much NIL money you could have gotten back then, too, before you'll let you off the show. But we wanted to have you on to talk about the baseball season as a whole, and Kurt was always at the
podcast
game.
Bomb by the dog up there.
What's that?
Yeah, he does that from time to time.
By the dog up there. Kurt's
Tim's
dog.
making an appearance.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah.
He's making some noise. I apologize for him.
That's all right.
He doesn't know how rude he's being.
We're a dog-friendly show. Mine barks a lot when we're on the show, and so I've actually put her in the other room and hope she'll be quiet.
If anybody has the nerve to walk in front of my house at any point during this, you'll hear it. So
yeah, well, we're fine with that. When Salva's on, we get guest appearances from his 2 golden retrievers. So we're dog-friendly here. But listen, obviously, I think the outcome of the baseball game and who they were playing is probably irrelevant as to why yesterday was important. It was the next step in Florida State starting the healing process from what happened last Thursday on campus, where 2 people were shot and killed and 4 others injured. I don't want to turn this into an emotional show. I know that sometimes I read your Twitter, and I know, Eric, you are around a lot of onions at times, and so am I. We're both emotional guys. But I just want to get of course, want to hear your big picture take on the baseball team, but just what was your reaction? And I want to ask both of you guys, because you were there. I was not. What was yesterday like in Dick Howser Stadium? Let's just talk about that question first. And Eric, I'll start with you.
I think it had a note of somberness to it, but at the same time, I think it was kind of a happy day. It was good to see people getting a chance to smile and laugh and have a good time with friends, with family, with loved ones, all of that. But there was a kind of an underlying somberness to it because everybody knows why yesterday became what it was at the ballpark. So, and it's a little bit of a weird feel. I thought what Florida State did was fantastic. I thought it struck a perfect note of getting the community involved and getting them out there and giving them an outlet to be around people and to maybe get a little bit of something that's a little more normal. I thought they did a tremendous job on that. I think you can I think you can get into things that are a little over the top and self-indulgent when you try to pull something like that off. And I thought what Florida State did yesterday was just absolutely incredible, with the Chiefs and David Plack and the president out there and the athletic director and the students and faculty and staff and all of the people involved in that, the first responders. I thought Florida State really did a great job with it yesterday.
Yeah, it was fun. I watched a little bit of it on television, more than anything, to see what kind of crowd they got, how many people were there. Because there's been, if you're on Facebook, Twitter, I know there are a lot of people that are apprehensive about going back down to campus, or still are. And I say all the time, and I've said it several times since we started covering sports again since this happened. Florida State, to me, in all college campuses I've grown up on, I feel as safe there as I do anywhere. Any apprehension going back down to campus, Lou? Or you were good with that?
No, I was fine with that. The way I look at it, since 1986, I don't know how many hours, days, however you want to count it, that I've spent on that campus. We've had 2 incidents like that that unfortunately have been within the last 11 years. But
yep.
In all of the time that I've been going down there, we've had 2 incidents like that. So was I worried about it? No. You've got, I think, things in place at an event like that to try to make sure you don't have somebody like that get in. So there's some safety involved in that really, obviously isn't necessarily a thing on campus. People aren't walking through metal detectors and things like that to get on campus. So that was not a thought in my head in going down there. I wasn't worried about that at all.
Yeah.
And certainly I can see some people, and you've got people on this campus now who were at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas and now are at Florida State, and they've lived through 2 of these. And, it's just wild to think about that being somebody's reality. So I can understand people who would have those thoughts and would have a little bit of fear and would be apprehensive, whether it's going to an event or just venturing back on campus to go to class. I get it. It's been something. So I get that. I didn't have any of that. Fortunately, in what I had to do and go and all of that, I didn't really think that would be an issue. But I feel for the people that are living through that and, have those concerns. It's rough.
Yeah, it is. And I understand that. That's tough to go through, but I can't wait to get back down on campus. I've been saying I'm going to go take the dog for a walk over as many parts of campus as I can. And Kurt, I know that you wrote an article this morning talking about the fact that this was kind of the pre-game ceremony was kind of the idea of Link Jarrett, and I want to ask both of you. You mentioned that he's a creature of habit, as most coaches are. Obviously, this was extraordinary circumstances, and obviously Lou's already talked about the point. There was a time and place for everything, and this was the place for that. But what were your thoughts? What did Link have to say about why he wanted to do this when you guys spoke to him after the game on Tuesday night?
Yeah, Link talked a lot. I think Link was great last night. The videos on our YouTube, you can go watch it there. I kind of encourage you. I always say his post-game interviews, or anytime you get him in an interview setting, is worth watching or listening to, but especially this one I thought was. He talked a lot about, I thought it was important to have everyone together, to be able to, they invited kind of any student, staff member, faculty member who had a ticket to go on the outfield during that pregame ceremony. And the team kind of made some sacrifices to make that happen. I think they kind of didn't get in some of their normal work they do in the outfield. I think Link admitted, yes, I was a little concerned about an injury risk of does missing this part of warm-up that we normally have affect things, or does, the teams would sacrifice on their own, giving up kind of infield, outfield defense work for the ceremony because kind of the whole field was taken for, and that's the time where a lot of that would normally happen, and it couldn't happen. But I think the Link talked a lot about kind of the importance of making those sacrifices to be able to have a moment like this. And I don't know if Link organized all this, but Link was a catalyst of talking about how important it was that kind of this being the first sporting event back on campus, that they have the big ceremony and have the first responders and have one of the TMH trauma surgeons throw out the first pitch and kind of have this moment of togetherness is kind of what he talked about. He kind of said, like, trying to restore normalcy, a sense of normalcy isn't enough. Kind of today was about togetherness, and I think they did a great job of accomplishing that with all they did. And the kind of, it was like a 25-30 minute like ceremony. It was quite a long ceremony for sure.
Yeah, and I'm sure it was very emotional. I didn't get to see, obviously, I saw video clips people posted on social media, but I'm sure it was very emotional for everyone involved. And listen, you as tough as these situations are, you do have to take the next step forward, and I think that the way Florida State chose to do it was pretty awesome, and happy that we have a head baseball coach like Link Jarrett that would sign off on something like that, regardless of whose idea it was, whether it was Richard McCullough, Mike's offered, or someone in their office. So I think it's awesome. I think it gives people a chance to, as you guys talked about, support each other and taking the next step and feeling comfortable back on campus. And listen, we always talk about unconquered, and I've talked about the fact that we talked on Monday's show. There are a lot of reasons I love Florida State. The vehicle for my association with Florida State was football, where my father coached for them. But there's a lot of reasons I love Florida State that are not attached to a sport. And, just like running into Lulu and Mike Williams and Matty McCormick and all the people I saw up at Gordo's on Friday when we were kind of coming together to now we were in different groups, obviously, Lou, but I think there was a sense of comfort in being able to be around Florida State people that day. And I know that was one of the reasons I ended up hanging out with some of the people I hung out with. But yeah, now I did got a question. Was Eddie Perez scheduled to call the game initially?
No.
Or was that
that was why the game was moved to 5:00, was to facilitate ACC Network. It was going to be on ACC Network Extra, like most every game is.
Yeah.
But Eduardo's involvement in it was really coming from it. It wasn't like ESPN said, "Hey, let's throw this game on TV and send Eduardo there because he went to FSU." Eduardo, it was his idea to be a part of that. And Link talked about that quite a bit with me before the game and after the game. And I know he talked about it with the media as well. Just Eduardo doing the things that he had to do within his own schedule to make that happen. But, he's got a daughter at FSU, and obviously he's got a deep love for the university as well, and felt that like the rest of us did. So, yeah, that was a last minute thing, and that's why that game got moved from 6 to 5 was due to TV, and that's when Eduardo got involved and ended up in Tallahassee for it. But it was good to see Eduardo. I've known him for a long time, and get to give him a hug and all of those things. So
yeah, I remember from college. I don't think he has any idea who I am, but I remember we were hosting Brad Scott had a offensive lineman from Georgia, and I can't remember, Lou, whether you had graduated. You still might have been here. There was a big old kid named Steve Roberts, and we had hung out on Friday night. I was with all the players, like I was once I got to college at Florida State to finish my degree, and we had taken Steve to a baseball party, which was really good, which Eddie was hosting. And so he had a really good time. So Brad Scott called me the next day and said, "Listen, I need you to get him back to a baseball party on Saturday night for this official visit." And of course, I had to try to track down Eddie Perez and Garrett Blanton to find out where it was, because I think Steve was kind of like you. He was a dual sport athlete in high school that was an offensive lineman that actually was a good pitcher in baseball. So anyway, so that's my only Eddie Perez story. But when I saw that he was coming, I thought, how great would it have been if they put you and Eddie in the booth together. Now, I know obviously you have not, I don't think you've done television, but play-by-play is play-by-play to some extent. So I thought it would have been really cool if they could have got both of you guys in the booth together. But anyway, it was kind of neat to see Eddie back on campus. All right, so I asked both of you guys this before we started, and I've gotten asked this question by several people, and they're kind of like me. They're more casual baseball fans, even though we do this show in baseball season. I'm a little bit more than casual, but a lot of people want to know about why, are asking, will the UVA series be replayed? And you guys are rescheduled, and you explained, Eric, why it will not be. And if you could let our listeners and viewers know why that is, I'd appreciate it.
Well, first and foremost, there's actually a rule in the Atlantic Coast Conference that has to do with rescheduling postponed or canceled conference games, and so each conference series, 3-day weekend, three games scheduled, Friday to Sunday or Thursday to Saturday, however you choose to do it, or TV dictates that it's done. But when you have those games scheduled in that weekend, if anything is postponed or canceled, it can't be rescheduled outside of that weekend window. The reason for the rule has to do with not giving teams like North Carolina State, Duke, a big advantage at being able to reschedule games because they can run, 20 minutes and go play a game on a random day in the middle of the week. Whereas a lot of the other teams in conference wouldn't have that ability to do that. So that's why they made that rule. Now, could they waive that rule for very, very special circumstances? Yeah, I would think that they could. But the problem you get into then is just a time problem. And that's, I think, after the end of that weekend when we were supposed to play Virginia, there were only 27 days left in the schedule, and Florida State had 14 games already on the schedule. So even if there wasn't a rule stopping that, just from a standpoint of finding the time to do it, Virginia paid money to come down here and travel on Thursday. Then we didn't play. They obviously the money that they spent on travel was already spent, so they're not getting that back. So then they would have to spend that money again, and teams budget throughout. So I don't know that you can just throw a random, a weekend for baseball when you've got to fly wherever you're going, whether you fly commercial or charter, obviously changes the cost. But this is it's not a cheap undertaking. You're talking about 100,000, 150,000. It's very costly. You're putting 40, 50 people up in a hotel. You're putting them on a plane. You're feeding them. You're giving them per diem. You're doing all of those things that are entailed with that. It's not an inexpensive endeavor. So to ask them to do it then again after they've done it once probably is not a realistic ask. And again, even if the other things didn't stop that from happening, I just wonder how much money would have played into it.
Yeah. All right. So if you were a person like me that was asking, would this game be made up? Eric has just explained to us why, and obviously I think it's understandable. All right. So let's kind of dig into this baseball team. Eric, you've been doing this a long time. This is Link's third season at Florida State. What is different about this year's team as compared to the past? And what do you really like about this baseball team as they get, I guess we'd call it the stretch run? You said 14 games left in 27 days.
Yeah, well, and now we played last night, so now we're down to 13. And I think this team's got some grit to it. I think that's one of the things you kind of watch this. I'm thinking about the Miami game. We took 2 out of 3 at Miami. The middle game of that series, Miami won. But I'm kind of in that game, and I'm watching it, and I never really felt like this wasn't, that was a game that Florida State wasn't going to come back and win. So I feel like this team's got a grit factor to it that really makes me feel like they're never really out of a game. Within reason. I don't know that I felt that way during one of the Wake Forest games, but sitting there and you're down. Well, last night we're down 4-0. There was never a feeling of, oh man, this is too much to overcome. We're not going to be able to do this, because I just kind of feel like this team's got some grit, some chutzpah to it, I guess, to throw something out there. And I really like that about this team. Obviously, there's a lot to like with the starting pitching. When Jamie Arnold and Joey Vellini and Wes Mendez are on, I think that's a very formidable trio. Hopefully, with what we saw out of them in Blacksburg, they kind of went through a couple of week issue there, but hopefully everybody's kind of back up after a week off and ready to go. I thought the starters were excellent in Blacksburg. Jamie Arnold was Jamie Arnold. Joey Vellini pitched like we've seen Joey Vellini pitch. And then Wes maybe didn't have his best stuff, but he battled through and ended up with an outing that was excellent. when you look at the numbers on it. So I really like this team with the starting pitching that they have. So those are probably two things that I really like about this group. We're sitting at 30-7 right now. You look at the RPI, sitting at number 8 in the RPI as of this morning, with some very good series remaining as far as the impact they can have on your RPI, but you've still got to go out there and get the job done. It's interesting that in a weekend where we didn't end up playing at all, we ended up in first place in the conference because of what happened with everybody else. That was kind of a wild thing to watch take place over the weekend. The main thing on that, I think the big surprise was Georgia Tech going down to Coral Gables and getting swept by Miami, who, by the way, is now sitting at 9-9 in the conference. I think people had written them off and written J.D. Arteaga off and all kinds of things, but now they're sitting at 500 in the conference, and they're suddenly one of those teams that when you start looking at projections for the conference for the postseason, there's thought that 9 or 10 teams might get in, and Miami suddenly isn't a team that you're definitely putting on the outside group. So, it was just kind of an interesting weekend how that all ended up playing out.
Yeah, and they've actually changed the format for the tournament this year, right?
Correct.
It's a little bit different than it has been in the years past. All right, so you've seen a lot. Listen, when we speak of grit, though, I do want to talk about this. Why did Max – you didn't learn on the television copy of Max being ejected till I guess the next half inning, right, when he went out on the field. What happened with that? There are a lot of people did not understand what had happened. Where I was, there was no sound, right? I'm watching on TV.
I mean, he hit a home run and he was saying things that he shouldn't have said, directed at the other team or directed wherever it's directed. It's he's saying things that he shouldn't have said, and he got thrown out for that. There were a lot of people who are like, well, there wasn't a warning issued. They don't have to issue a warning.
Well,
if they decide whatever happened was egregious enough that you're going to eject somebody, they can eject somebody right then and there, and that's what they did.
Yeah.
So that's unfortunate. It's also unfortunate that he's going to miss the game on Friday in Louisville, which is a really, really big series for this team. So that's unfortunate as well. But yeah, you've got to. There's a fairly fine line when you go out there as far as what you can and can't say, and if you step over it, sometimes there's going to be ramifications for doing that, and Max felt those last night.
Well, he's been towing that line a little bit, you could say. He often is known for his exuberant celebrations that could be defined as a bit much, and you wonder if umpires don't talk, and they might have he might have their reputation going into that one.
Well, and these are not the guys who were umpiring that game last night are not guys who are unfamiliar with Florida State. Jeff Gosney's done a number of games. He was the crew chief last night and umpiring second base. Robert Nunez was behind the plate. He's done a number of games just in recent times. So it's not like he's another guy that's new to Florida State. So, they talk, but they know these guys too because we're not dealing with a lot of guys that we just don't see on a regular basis.
All right. Well, listen, how much time have you had to research Louisville? What kind of opponent is Florida State taking on this weekend? And because it is a tight race at the top of the ACC standings, and obviously that will impact the seeding for the conference tournament. What challenges will they provide Florida State up in Louisville this weekend?
Well, Dan McDonald's always put good teams out on the field, and this one is no different. They had a rough go of it last night at Lexington playing Kentucky, so they're coming off of a rivalry game. Where they lost, I think the final was 17-5 in that one. So that would make you believe that they're probably going to be a little snarling mad coming into this weekend, coming off a loss to a rival like that. They're a team, they've got, when you look at their frontline pitchers, they've got some starters that can really sling it. They've got some guys in their lineup that you really don't get much of a chance to take a breath when you're facing your lineup, and that's pretty typical with Dan. They're a team that they'll be very aggressive. They will try to force you into making mistakes. They'll run a lot on the base paths. They'll do a lot of things to try to force the action to you, and you've got to take care of that if you're FSU. Another thing too, they're sitting at 9-10, I believe, in the conference. I think that I may be off by a game or two, but They're sitting, I believe, in 7th place. And the way the new format works, everybody's in. So all 16 teams are in the conference tournament. It's single elimination. If you're a 9 to 16 seed, you're going to have to win 5 games to win the whole thing. If you are a 5 to 8 seed, you get 1 bye, and then you would have to win 4 games to get all the way and win it. If you're 1 to 4, you get a double bye into the quarterfinals, and you can win it by winning 3 games. So if you're a team, you're not only trying to stay out of that 9 to 16 and have to play 5 games, you're trying to stay out of that because somebody in that group is when you look at that group of teams that make up the 9 to 16, just about every team in there is probably fighting for their postseason life by needing to win the tournament to get into the postseason. So if you're going to get 9 or 10 teams in, that means somebody in that group from 9 to 16, most of the teams in that group aren't getting in, and they're probably not getting in unless they make a deep run or they get to the finals and win it. So if you're Louisville sitting at 7 now, you really have to look at this and say, we can't afford to fall back anymore because we don't want to fall into that 9 to 16 club just because what it does to you for the tournament, what it does to you for your own postseason hopes. So I would imagine they'll be pretty motivated this weekend when we come to town.
Yeah, and you're right. They are 7th place, 10-8, 28 and 10-8 in the conference, and 28-12 overall. Listen, this team is pretty. I mean, it's got some explosive offense. You mentioned that you're more comfortable with the pitching the deeper we get into the year with Mendez and Arnold and I can't even remember. I always screw up Joey's last name. Valini. But you got an offense that's been unbelievable at times with Max Williams, Alex Lodice, Miles Bailey and listen, there are a lot of guys hitting the ball, right? I mean, we saw DeLon Malure go out twice against Miami. There's power all over the place. And I guess you've seen, and I guess it might not be a fair question because I imagine the number of true freshmen that have had an impact at Florida State on the baseball team is probably more than I'll ever be able to remember. But and of course, I always like to work in the Lincoln guys into the podcast, and we got a 38 guy, Miles Bailey, on the campus at Florida State. Has there been another freshman that you could comp him to as far as impact in the season, the kind of year he's having? Of course, I think he might have cooled down just a tad from what he was doing early in the season. But when's the last time you saw a freshman have that kind of impact in the batter's box? Maybe not so much on the pitch. I mean, obviously not a pitcher, but I know Florida State's had great freshman pitchers before. But what do you think about Miles' season so far?
Yeah, you look at trying to remember guys that came in and were starters from day one as freshmen. You had Tyler Holt fits into that category. Stuart Tapley was a guy who had a fantastic freshman year. Back before they changed the bats back in 2011, I think it was. I think Tap hit like 380 something and had 6 or 7 home runs as a freshman. Jason Stidham was very good, had a big impact as a freshman for Florida State when he came to FSU. And those are a few guys that come to mind right away. I think Bailey he's been able to do this, and he's been able to do it batting for the most part in the middle of the lineup, which is really something for a freshman to do that. You go back to Cam Smith's first year, and he had to bat. I want to say he hit second in the lineup as a freshman, and that was not really an ideal place for a guy like him, but that's where he had to be in that team. So, Miles Bailey has been able – if you go back to the start of the season, they had him somewhere 6, 7, somewhere in there, which you get a freshman, he's going to see better pitches in that part of the lineup, but his production has dictated that he move up. And so he has moved up, and he's in that 4 spot. I think last night he's now got – he'd reached base safely in 23 straight games. Then he had 1 game where he didn't get on base. And now he's got a new streak, which is at 7, I think. So he's done a good job, even on nights where maybe he doesn't impact the baseball with his bat. He's still doing a good job of going out there, getting on base, getting up other guys' opportunities to get him around and score. And I think that's, what you can ask for out of a freshman. I think he's filled everything that you could possibly have imagined he would be this freshman year. And, he's also had to do it because if he's not able or ready, they had Bladen Plain, who probably would have factored in somewhere in the outfield or at first base. And he got hurt and hasn't been available. And that's unfortunate, but it's provided that opportunity for them to go with Miles Bailey and really kind of stick with him. Even if he had a couple of rough games, you don't have that guy. Okay, let's just put somebody else in there right now. They've been able to stick with him, and for him to have long sustained success, I think has been, for him in the long run, I think is going to be very good.
Yeah, he's been fun to watch, and of course, I am proud of Lincoln guys. I mean, I'm a proud Lincoln Trojan. So,
I'm a proud Tampa Jesuit guy. We've got a few of those in the lineup too.
Yeah, you certainly do. You certainly do. You have a lot of reason to. I was going through the roster today, and I was like, Lulu knows a lot of these guys.
Yeah,
a whole weekend rotation.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
The whole weekend rotation plus John Abraham and Noah Sheffield. So that's the five Tampa Jesuit guys. And then when we went to Jacksonville and played University of Florida, the night Lodis hit the grand slam, Abraham started for Florida State, and Bymiller, who was the starter for Florida, is a true freshman who's another Jesuit guy. So
I know you've talked about it probably nonstop. Every conversation you've had with individuals, text messages, whether you've been on other shows, I'm sure that call you've had to. I'm sure that was all you talked about for weeks.
Yeah.
All right. So you've had a chance to call a lot of great calls for Florida. I mean, you've been around for the most historic moments in the program, a lot of them. Where does that call rank? And I know that's a hard question because even if it was at number 10, that's still a pretty impressive list.
Yeah, I tell you what, I think it's going to be really hard to top that moment. Just from a standpoint of, the closest thing I can think of to that was Mike McGee with a walk-off against Miami in Tallahassee, probably. And now without going back and looking it up, I can't tell you exactly what year, but somewhere in the 2009, 2010 range. It would have been 2010, I think. But regardless, he had a walk-off to win it against Miami with a home run. That was a big moment. It's Miami. It's a walk-off. It's a home run. It's as dramatic as you can get. But all of the things, like you break down that Lodis situation, any of the things in that situation, standing by themselves, make that a huge moment. It's a grand slam. That's big. They're rare. It's a grand slam against your rival. Okay, that's big. That's rare. It's against your rival. It's a walk-off grand slam. Okay, walk-off grand slams don't happen that often. It's a walk-off grand slam against your rival. It's a walk-off grand slam against your rival to hit for the cycle. I mean, like every layer you add to that, there is nothing undramatic that you can add to that was involved to take that down a notch. And I think just all of those things, the grand slam, the walk-off, the cycle, the fact that it's the Florida Gators, I think make that such a huge. Now, let me preface this by saying, could we have a moment that is bigger than that I'll look back at later on down the road and go, yeah, that was bigger than Lodis? Sure. That's going to need to happen in Omaha. I mean, that's when that moment can happen. And that's if the final out is made and you're on the winning end of the scoreboard in Omaha. That's going to be bigger than any other moment that we have had as a baseball program when that moment happens. So yes, could something happen that would be bigger than that? I think so. But that moment in and of itself, to me, is the biggest one that I've seen in person for a Florida State baseball game.
Well, it was cool to watch on television. I can't even imagine what it would have been like to be there, let alone calling it.
Well, then I got Chip Baker in the booth, and all he started pulling his phone up in the top of the ninth, recording individual pitches just in case he was going to get something that was very dramatic. So he did that, and he recorded when Florida tied it. He recorded when they took the lead, and then Lodis comes up there, and he's hitting the record button again. So he just happened to be there to record it, which I think it was the day after the game. His video had like 165 or 170,000 views on it, which was really just, that's amazing because you're talking about college baseball. You're not talking about a major league game. So for that to go viral the way it did, I think was really incredible. But Chip just happened to be there because Chip rode with me to go to the game.
Well, that's a cool story. I don't know how many people know, or I'm sure more people know that than I think, but that's pretty cool. All right, so you actually kind of this question is for both of you, and we're hoping to have Lou on again next week to talk about the Louisville series. Hopefully we'll get a chance to talk more FSU baseball with him. But I do want to ask both of you guys, you mentioned the College World Series. Obviously this team's going to get going to go to a regional, probably even host a regional. We'll see what happens after that. They're 30-7, number one in the ACC. Florida State's always hosted regionals for years and years. But so my question is to you, Lou, and to Kurt. FSU makes the College World Series. If FSU makes the College World Series where you are today, where they are today, it's because of what, Lou? What is the key to Florida State, where they sit right now, getting to the College World Series as you see it?
Consistency out of the three starters.
Okay.
I think that's huge because if those guys are pitching the way we've seen them pitch, you can count on them to get you 6 or 7 innings. And I think if you shorten the game down that much with starting pitching the way those guys can pitch, I think if you shorten the game that much, I think Florida State, I think they've got a really good shot at getting to Omaha. So I think that's the key for this team to get there, is to have those three starters pitch the way we've seen them at their best pitch. And if they're doing that, I think we'll be in good shape.
Kurt, what's your key?
I mean, it's hard not to go the same way. It feels like you have to like this team odds in any weekend series. If, like, for instance, just to look at like the first two, if Jamie Arnold and Joey Bellini give you, like, say 12 innings, if they both give you 6 innings, or if one gives you 7 and one gives you 5, and there's how that sets up your pitching staff, you have to really like how they're going to be in any weekend series. I worry a little about this team, like, coming out of a loser's bracket situation if they were to drop one of the first couple in a regional, just with not having I'm totally blanking. Evan Crest now losing him for the season changes the arithmetic, kind of the math, if they were to lose one of the first 2 in a regional. But I think, it's going to be on the strengths of the pitching and on the strengths of the defense. And we kind of didn't talk about, they played really good defense all year, but last year 2 really ridiculous plays in the outfield. And so it feels like, I mean, pitching and defense has been what Link thought was going to be the key to this team going into the year. And I think that still very much remains the case.
All right. So, Eric, it also dawned on me, and we're going to segue to football now. And it dawned on me, I was thinking about this the other day, and I don't know what the average age of our listeners, viewers are on this show, but it dawned on me that there's a segment of people that only know you as voice of FSU baseball, right? I mean, we've gotten to that point in where we've lived lifetimes since we were in college, and some people have, so for people that are maybe 20 years old, they may not be aware that you played football at Florida State, and even more so that you were one of the most highly recruited offensive linemen, not in the state of Florida, but in this entire country coming out of high school. And we're in this interesting time in college football where NIL and portal are taking over everything, and a lot of people are losing interest because of it. They're certainly losing interest in recruiting coverage at the high school level. But I have a fun question for you first before we get your take on NIL and portal. You would have been, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I remember, you would have been considered a Rivals top 250 prospect for sure. And I think you would have been in the Rivals top 100. You may be higher than that, because I believe you were, in today's standards, the number 1 ranked interior offensive lineman in the country. If not, you were close to it. You're 1 of 5 or 6. How much money would you have asked for in the portal today, or NIL money would you have asked for today?
I honestly, I don't know. The funny thing about it is I don't even know what that means for the kid that's in my shoes today. So I don't know how much that kid's getting.
About $600,000.
Oh, wow. Well, I was just born at the wrong time. You know, I used to get mad at my mom because my birthday's July 23rd. So they had this nebulous date cutoff of August 1st, where if you were born prior to August 1st, you had to play as a year older than what you were. And so when I was playing Little League Baseball, because this was, you know, obviously I wasn't as big as or strong as all the other kids my age. So it was really a big disadvantage for me to have to play as a year older, being a little facetious there. But I used to always joke with my mom. I was like, you couldn't have waited like 8 more days and get me out August 1st. So I could have been playing as my actual age instead of playing a year older. So when I was 11, I was playing as a 12-year-old in Little League and for the entire season because we were done before July 23rd rolled around. So now I guess I need to have another reason to tell her although in that one, she was way, way too early.
Yeah, way too early.
I just, you know, it's interesting because it's something that I just can't really grasp. Like I can't imagine. Look, it's a good time to be a college football player and to be on a campus like Florida State. That's a good time. Like you have a good college life when that happens. Yeah. There are certain things that you know there are doors that are open to you that aren't open to regular students, and so it's you feel that when you're playing. I can't imagine though feeling that way and having a pocket full of money at the same time because it just, you know, I didn't have to take out student loans or anything like that, and I had a full scholarship, but we weren't allowed to work during August to basically April or May when the semester ended. We couldn't. We could only work during the summer. So I had to kind of live on what I made working in the summer. I had to make that last throughout the year just so I didn't have to ask my parents for money because my parents weren't going to, you know, send me a whole bunch of money either. So it's just weird to me to think like to live that way as a football player and what that brings and have a pocket full of money to do it it's just such a weird concept to me, even though we've lived that reality now for a number of years.
Yeah, there's pretty good perks in being a college football player before NIL.
I'm not going to try to gloss that over at all. It wasn't a bad life at all.
Yeah, but has it changed your appreciation for the game, the way you follow it? Has it, you know, I talked to Mark Salva yesterday. I was actually going to try to get him to come on the show so you guys could tell stories. And he was going to be traveling, and, you know, I kind of talked to him about figured he knew about what was going on in the portal, and he's like, Pat, he goes, I don't even pay attention. He goes, just show me who those on the roster August 29th before they play Alabama.
Yeah, and you know, I kind of shifted into that mode years ago when and for those that don't know, I used to do an afternoon sports talk show from 1997 to 2001. And covering recruiting was never my favorite thing. It wasn't my favorite thing to talk about. You did it because that's what people wanted to hear. So once I stopped doing that, I really kind of I pulled way back from paying attention to recruiting. So, you know, I'm the one that people would always, hey, what do you think Florida State's chances are on this guy? And a lot of time my answer would be, I don't even know who that is. But they think, you know, he played and he used to have this sports talk show. He probably knows. But I just have never, when I haven't had to do it professionally, I've never been one to really follow recruiting that closely. So I don't know that I feel any different about that part of it now because it just – you know, getting concerned and worked up over it was never something that I did anyway. I can still remember. I remember Keith Jones one time. We had Andre Luallen was on the roster, and he was redshirted, so he wasn't playing. Or no, maybe he was getting recruited, and this was back in the days when Sunshine Network would have the Sunday night replays of our home games, all of our games, and it was Paul Kennedy and Keith Jones. And I remember, I don't remember how Luallen came into the discussion, but Keith didn't know who he was because he hadn't played yet. And Keith's like, "Look, I don't follow recruiting, and I don't follow them until I see them get on the field." So he goes, "I know who Eric Luallen is. I don't know anything about anybody named Luallen." Before Andre had actually gotten out there and played. So it was a pretty funny moment. I kind of laughed because I was like, no, I kind of get that, Keith.
Yeah, I kind of, it makes more sense to me as we get older as well. All right, Kurt, you got anything for Lou? Any more questions for Lou?
No, I think we've covered what we need to for now. If we have him back on later, maybe we can dive into more stuff. But
I will throw this football in. So last night I get done. I go down on the field usually about an hour or so, somewhere in between 45 minutes to an hour before first pitch. I record a pregame conversation with Link that I play during my pregame show, and it's usually 3 to 4 minutes that I get a chance to talk to Link. And after I got done with that, I went back up into the radio booth, and I'm getting ready to go on the air. And I've got a replay monitor in there that's got the ACC network or the ACC network extra or ESPN or whoever it is. I've got whatever feed is going on. And they were at a commercial or they hadn't gone on the air yet or whatever it was, but they were showing all the kids filing in to the gate over there by the Haggard Plaza and showing all the college students and admin and staff who came down on the field before the game. They were showing them all filing in, and leaning on the fence right there by the gate was Odell Higgins. There's Odell
really
hanging out, and he saw the camera. He gave it a little wave, but there was Odell, and it made me happy to see Odell, because if you pick somebody out over the last 40 years that is Florida State, to me, Odell's one of those people. So it was good. I loved seeing Odell leaning on the fence there, watching the kids file out to go on the field for this moment. And that was kind of cool for me.
Yeah, that is awesome. And I think you're right. Jerry and I have talked about this before. He is arguably the second most recognizable figure in Florida State athletics history outside of Coach Bowden. When you think of Florida State football, you think of Charlie and Dion for sure. The guys that were All-Americans and made it big. And but yeah, I always say it's Odell's lived a dream life, and it's Shane, when he was on staff at Florida State as a defensive analyst, used to talk about when they would take golf carts rides around campus just to take, get out of the office, get some fresh air, go run, grab something to eat on campus somewhere. And he's like, man, he goes, we couldn't get more than 50 yards at a time, because every time we pull up, somebody sees Odell, they want to talk to him, and Odell is gracious enough to, stop for a second while they're on their way to wherever they were going, Chick-fil-A in the middle of campus. And he was talking about how every time we go, we're going to run real quick, and 15 minutes would turn into an hour type of thing, because Odell is so engaged with the kids on campus. That is a cool story.
Yeah, I feel really old when I see his daughter, who's now an excellent volleyball player at Tulane. That makes me feel really old.
Yeah, those are a lot of things that are making me feel old lately, and those are some of the things that do it. All right, hey, Lou, we appreciate it, man. We hope that you'll be able to come back and join us either Monday or Wednesday of next week, whatever works best for your schedule. But we'd certainly like to hear your report from Louisville and what happened with the Noles on the baseball diamond.
Sounds good.
All right, thanks, Lou.
Appreciate it, Lou.
All right, Kurt, we got a little softball news. Softball will be having a senior day next Wednesday. I think it's free.
Yes.
And they will be having a home run derby, autograph signed by the team. So I don't know what time that starts. And I apologize for that.
It's at 6. It's on the Twitter, on the FSU softball Twitter.
Yep. So
free admission. Gates open at 5. Free hot dogs while supplies last. Giveaways for the first 300 fans. Concessions available. Senior presentations and skills showcase, and an autograph session. And it is cool because it was unfortunate that Florida State lost, baseball lost the series, but softball lost their final home games before the postseason. They're going to host the postseason, but they lost kind of the final regular season home games. They were supposed to have senior day over the weekend against Georgia Tech, and that whole series got canceled too, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, if you want to get one more visit in with the softball team, I think it'd be cool to see the home run derby. That'd be pretty fun. They got some people that can hit the girls that can hit the ball in that team. And of course, obviously a great opportunity for your kids to come and get autographs if you've got kids and that like softball. So that'll happen at 6:00 next Wednesday. Kurt, any updates on what's going on basketball? I thought they might have gotten a commitment or signed somebody over the last 2 days or so. I know we didn't get into it Monday on the show simply because we were talking about what happened on campus last Thursday, but I thought they had gotten a commitment from a kid from IMG. Am I wrong?
That was a week ago. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
it was.
Yeah. They picked up 2 last week. They picked up the high school kid, from Cam Miles at IMG, and then they picked up Martin Somerville. He was the freshman of the year in the America East Conference at UMass Lowell. He was visiting, I think, Wednesday and Thursday, and committed, I think, on Friday. But I think they're close to done. I think, the numbers wise, they're just. I know Leonard Hamilton always says don't count his scholarships, and so I'm not counting Luke Louse's scholarships, but I think they're kind of close to done. I think kind of maybe the one piece they're looking still to add would be a true 7-foot center. They have a few options, maybe not the kind of defensive guy who can be kind of imposing in the middle there. But I think given the parameters of what Luke's had to work with, he doesn't have at least to start, kind of the financial backing that some of these programs are seeing. You're seeing some programs are having $8 million or $10 million for their basketball roster budget. Luke does not have that. And I think given those parameters, he's done a pretty good job of building this roster, building this coaching staff, and kind of doing the most with what he can to make a fun product to watch next year.
Yeah, was it you that wrote he had been here 40 days? Or somebody wrote that he'd been 40 days.
I think he's a little past 40 now. Yeah, I think Martin Somerville, I think last Friday was the 40th day. I think a couple weeks ago, I think Bob wrote kind of all he's done in the first month on the job. Bob wrote a 30-day type story, and I think I'm hoping to catch up with him at some point. Maybe can record a interview for the show here, because I know he can talk about guys now. I think they've signed, so he can talk about kind of the players they've added where maybe he hasn't been able to do that.
It's hard to believe he's been here 40 days already. All right, so my dog is barking. So, hey, we've got very little portal news, but we do have one bit of update. Houston defensive back Jeremiah Wilson will be on Florida State's campus tomorrow. He made 24 tackles, 4 interceptions last year with 4 pass breakups. He's got 1 year of eligibility remaining. Right now, he's the only prospect that we know, our portal prospect, that's going to be on campus. Are you surprised that Florida State has been? Now, listen, there's still 48 more hours to go for kids to enter, and they could bring in more kids than we're expecting. We know we don't get the same amount of information on the portal prospects. There's a lot of reasons for that. As we do the high school prospects, the portal guys are a little bit more protective. They're going through agencies. Are you surprised Florida State has not been more active in the portal as far as getting kids on campus, or do you expect that we might see some surprises before this thing is through?
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing is, the deadline is Thursday, Thursday at midnight into Friday is when the portal closes. But again, that just is when it closes for entries. I do think we'll see more going on next week. I think we'll see that carrying on. I mean, the truth is, this portal window, there's not nearly as much a rush, because the whole thing with the December portal window is you've got to rush to get guys enrolled by January to kind of get them a part of the team for spring. I mean, I think spring semester doesn't start, or the summer semester rather doesn't start still for 3 more weeks. So guys might be finishing out the semester and then visiting. I mean, I will say I feel for the second straight year heard a lot of hype and build up around the spring portal window, and there just hasn't been a ton. It's just not nearly what the winter window is, and kind of that makes sense from a standpoint of it's just hard to go somewhere and arrive a few months before and kind of immediately play. And we saw it a few years ago with Keon Coleman, but it's not easy to be a guy who arrives over the summer and plays a key role on a team in August. But I think we could see some receivers. I think you could see a safety. I think you always look at kind of the defensive line as could they stand to add more, especially, I mean, a few guys have question marks injury wise coming out of spring, and Jason Jenkins and Daniel Lyons. But I think I probably expected more departures post-spring than additions, but
Yep.
I'll be interested to see. I mean, Jeremiah, I don't think has any other visits set up. I think he signed out of high school to play for Tony White in Syracuse, so there's some familiarity there with his defense and with him, and so you wonder if that's maybe a one and done, and then you wonder how quickly does other stuff come together this weekend or next week.
Yeah, and I do think that, listen, I think Florida State went heavy in the winter portal. That's when the vast majority of your best players are going to come out is because they want to be on campus for their new school spring. I think that's an important part of it. But, yeah, I think that I'm like you. I'm kind of surprised we have not seen more kids jump in the portal from Florida State, and there's still a chance for that to happen, right? I thought we were going to see more towards a dozen guys than what we have seen. That's for sure. And listen, I think that one of the things I think is fascinating as an industry that all these recruiting services have to get down is these portal rankings. I read something yesterday where T.J. Ferguson was listed as the 10th best overall prospect in the portal by one recruiting service and the number one interior offensive lineman. Either these services are not watching film, or this is a really bad portal class, or both. But listen, it's interesting now. I do have updates on 2 wide receivers at Florida State and either offered or had interest in. Keelan Marion had been offered by Florida State. He was the BYU receiver. He has set up a visit with SMU, Miami, Arizona State, and Tennessee. He does not have Florida State on his visit list, but that could change depending on what his timeline is and what Mike has in mind for a deadline. I'm sure he wants everyone in summer school for starting in May so they can be a part of off-season. The other update, Jarvis Boatwright, who is a safety from Clearwater, Florida, who Florida State recruited heavily as a class of 2024 prospect. He has jumped in the portal. He's at University of Southern California. It will be interesting because my personal belief is Florida State does need to bring in a safety. Now, obviously, I would like to see them go over a guy with production over potential, but Jarvis is a guy that they liked a lot. He committed to Florida's USC, I believe, in that famous weekend where they had all the kids over for a junior day event back in the spring of his going into his senior year. But Jarvis is in the portal. And then, of course, the other receiver that they had offered, Trayshawn Hurry, has committed to Louisville, so Florida State will not be bringing him in. But I'm with Kurt. I do think that we will see them bring in another receiver or two. Obviously, there's some holes to fill there, Kurt, because I do believe the 3 guys that left, even though they had not produced much since they've been here, I do think that the staff had them figuring into the rotation, if nothing else. So I do expect we'll see some more receivers.
Yeah, I mean, there are different situations all around. Obviously, one guy who is a quick turnaround, only here 3 months, in Jordan Scott. Yep. And when it's a situation like that, you wonder if that's a mutual parting type thing, if that's an honest conversation Mike had. It might have been. I mean, we talked about maybe a missed eval. A guy like Hakeem Williams is a tough situation where he just hasn't been able to stay healthy. And he was a guy who always was a 5-star recruit out of high school because of his potential, because of how ready-made he was. And kind of with how banged up he's been, you wonder if he just kind of thought it was time for a fresh start somewhere else, which is it's tough when one of your better recruits that you've signed, if you're Mike Gravel out of high school, doesn't work out here. And I think it's entirely possible he works out somewhere else. Yep. And then Jalen Brown, obviously a dismissal that's kind of a not on-field related whatsoever. And so that's, a situation where, you were hoping to get something out of him, but I know he was somewhat banged up this spring too. And I think you're in a place where you can't exactly be putting up with off-field situations, and kind of stuff has to be done about when stuff like that arises.
Yeah. Well, listen, I think somebody said we're exactly 4 months away from the opening of college football.
Yep. Week 0.
Week 0, I think it's got a Thursday game, and I think that's what. Well, no, I don't know if it's Thursday or not. But anyway, we're 4 months away from the start of college football season. All right, Kurt. Well, listen, there's not a ton of stuff to report on the portal. We'll probably have Nick on Friday, and Nick and I will delve into the portal a little bit more. Got some recruiting nuggets, and hopefully we'll have some post-visit reaction from Houston defensive back Jeremiah Wilson, again, who is going to be on Florida State's campus tomorrow, Thursday, for an official visit, and he right now is the only prospect that we are aware of that Florida State will be hosting. I did say this the other day, and I do believe it. I do not think that every kid that signs in the portal this year will take an official visit. I think someone will just going to say, hey, Florida State's the place for me. I don't need to go. It's a one-year deal. We've seen that happen with some other guys early in the portal cycle, but the portal does end on Friday, 12:01 a.m., I guess it is. The 26th is when it closes, whenever that is.
Entries.
So entries, and then, of course, we'll see what happens from there. But, hey, we appreciate everybody joining us. We hope you enjoyed Lulu being on the show. Great guy. Obviously knows more about Florida State baseball than just about everybody except who's in that dugout. He's there every day watching that team practice. So always fun to have Lulu on. I just happened to run into him last Friday, and I was like, you know what? I need to have Lulu on the show sometime, and I think he's going to come back next week. But please go to the Osceola.com or FloridaState.Rivals.com, and you can check out Kurt's story on the genesis of yesterday's pregame ceremony and why they linked Jarrett. Thought it was important to do that. Obviously, we have his baseball report. We've also got news on Jeremiah Wilson's official visit, among many, many other things. And so please go to theosceola.com or FloridaState.Rivals.com and check us out. If you like what you read, we ask that you give us a chance and subscribe to the Osceola. And while you're on here, whether you're listening via podcast, you can obviously on podcast sign up for alerts for the podcast. And if you're watching the YouTube version of the show, please subscribe to the Osceola YouTube channel and hit the notification button so that you get notified when we're doing shows live or taped. And of course, I'm glad that it sounds like the chainsaws, we eliminated that today. So if that was something you heard, again, we had a little bit of construction going on outside my house. So I hope that did not ruin the show for you. Kurt, I appreciate it, man. And we will see everybody on Friday at 3:00. Have a good one.
See y'all.